of this mystical river flow up into the sky. They will take you wherever you want to go.
This clip says it all. I don't have to explain anything. Okay, maybe I do have to explain some things. Starting with, what in the world is this cartoon? This is Dungeons & Dragons, the animated series, named after the legendary namesake role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. It was developed in 1983 for the CBS network and animated by Toei Animation. Yes, the same Toei Animation that made Dragon Ball and One Piece. Now the question is, why haven't I heard of this cartoon before? And is it good? I'll be real with you. I'm probably in the same boat as you. I don't know why I haven't heard of this cartoon before earlier either. All I remember was watching parts of 2 episodes from some channel when I was a wee lad and seeing the words Dungeons and Dragons. But I remember that cartoon was so different from everything else that I saw at the time that it was burned into my memory. And unfortunately, I can never find that cartoon again for a very long time. But with the magical powers of the internet, I have discovered the cartoon and went on a binge. And let me remove my nostalgia glasses for a little bit and tell you about this cartoon. Synopsis: Dungeons & Dragons is about a group of young teens visiting an amusement park when suddenly they are portaled into the world of Dungeons & Dragons. There they meet the enigmatic guide called Dungeon Master, are given powerful magical artifacts that came straight out of Area 51, assigned RPG classes, and are joined by the full unicorn called Uni as they attempt to find a way back home. As they explore the vast worlds of Dungeons & Dragons, they are constantly thwarted by Venger, an evil wizard that looks like he's trying to join a power metal band. So yeah, they're basically Iskide. In this world, the young heroes journey across far and wide lands in search of a magical way to return home, and in doing so they trek through magically enchanted forests, hike past blistering deserts, venture into stone-hewn mines, enter maliciously trapped castles and towers, rave at a music festival, and have a throwdown in the spaceships amongst many other things. I'm not even joking about that spaceship part. The scenery and environments this show produces is not only diverse, but creative as well, and accompanying the landscape is a colorful cast of wacky creatures and supernatural inhabitants that captures the imagination, from towering stone golems to creepy seductive spider ladies akin to Shadow of War Shelob to, of course, mighty dragons. But, if you're expecting this cartoon to take place in a specific Dungeons & Dragons world, such as the Forgotten Realms or Eberron, then I am the bearer of some bad news. It's an unspecified world. So that means no, you're not gonna go see Drizzt around. Besides, he kinda came in after this cartoon was made. And as our heroes journey across the lands, they are confronted with a multitude of problems that are thematically relevant for a young teenager. Thematic challenges such as love, loneliness, hate, and mistrust arises, and they have to solve it to the best of their abilities, with Dungeon Master's riddles often paving the way and guiding them. These problems can be trusting a friend again after they botched up rescuing a village from orcs, or helping an old witch find the courage to fight against an evil ghoul. It's a light-hearted cartoon aimed at a younger audience and has deceptively well-written and hilarious character bantering, one-liners, and visual gags. For example, Presto the Wizard often bungles his spells and conjures up something kinda crazy and absurd, which is often followed up by a witty observational-styled retort from Eric the Cavalier. But that very same spell bungle often ends up helping the group. It's amusing overall and can be universally understood by everyone. But it's not all fun and games, because this cartoon does touch upon some relatively heavy themes and elements, such as an episode where the heroes basically goes, hey, why not use these weapons to, end the bad guy? With a combination of relevant, heavy themes, lighthearted jokes, and creative landscapes and creatures that ignites the fires of imagination. It's a really fun adventure. And all of this is wrapped up and presented with outstanding art animation and mostly solid voice acting for its time. Mostly. And for its time.
You have Dragon's Graveyard!
Okay, so this is a product of the 1980s, and it's critical to smash that like button, ring the bell, and highlight why this matters. Are you guys groaning because of the critical pun or the like and bell thing? Regardless, this cartoon was created in the 1980s and thus is bound by the limitation of its era. Back then, they didn't have the power of Skynet or Google in the palm of their hands. Their computers looked like this. Like, the farthest the 1980s got in the tech tree was researching a Miyazaki, which, while awesome, doesn't unlock the Toon Boom or OpenToon software. So pretty much everything is hand-drawn, and if you're into those classic art styles, then that's great. If not, and you want those clean, sharp lines at a billion FPS, or those crazy Dragon Ball Super fight sequences, then yeah, you're not gonna get that, even if it's Toei. Following the same logic, sound is also important to note. A lot of voiceovers and dialogue for cartoons at the time is very over the top, and Dungeons & Dragons is no exception. Think classic Scooby-Doo or 1980s He-Man over the top, with them sounding like they're in a different room. The main characters have solid great voice acting.
Dungeon Master, wait! How do we get to the Dragon's Graveyard?
You carry the way with you. Let it begin with you, Ranger.
I said no riddles. Okay, you heard him.
But the voice qualities of their one-off characters are like blindfolding a silverback gorilla and having it play darts. You never know what kind of quality you're gonna get.
I can see great wealth in your future. And in the future I see... Oh no! No!
And while I absolutely love the theme song with its melancholic hopefulness, that's pretty much the only memorable music you're gonna get. And sound effects are hit or miss with a lot of lasers pew pew and explosions from its time period. What I am trying to say is, manage your expectations. This is a cartoon of the 1980s, and therefore it's unreasonable to expect modern tech traits in this cartoon. That's like expecting an old retro Game Boy to bust out mint 3D graphics. It's just not gonna happen. But what about the story? The story is simple and easy to understand. It generally follows this return to status quo structure. Dungeon Master presents a potential way for the young heroes to return home, and then leaves a cryptic riddle with them. They follow Dungeon Master's instructions while trying to figure out what the riddle means. They encounter an ally of the day or a villain of the day. Said ally or villain relates to a theme conflict such as fear or loneliness. Venger usually shows up and makes things worse. Then the meaning of the riddle is finally revealed and they stop the villains.
You dummy! Dungeon Master said you only have to replace one! And I quote, "The fate of one is shared by all." Stuff that in your hat.
Always at the expense of their way home. The theme conflict is resolved and the heroes learn something about themselves and they return to the status quo of trying to find a way home, often with character development. This type of formula is used in a lot of other shows, such as Pokemon and classic Scooby-Doo, and serves as an easy way to get into the cartoon without having to watch the first episode to understand what's going on. Accompanying the story structure is a healthy dose of snarky and very corny humor and one-liners, such as Eric the Cavalier requesting a free phone call after being jailed. In a fantasy land.
So, who's for busting out of here?
Forget it. We already tried. Without our weapons, we're just regular.
Regular? We're giant size! Come on! What's the matter with you guys? So we don't have our weapons. We've still got our voices.
Huh?
I want to see my lawyer! There's no TV in my cell! But what about my phone call? I demand my rights!
Or Sheila, the thief, doing a hilariously poor imitation of orcs in the middle of combat.
You'll be sorry if you come any closer.
She gone. Where'd she go?
So long. She go bye-bye now.
But I do see issues for some viewers with this formula. With the advent of live streaming services and the internet, a viewer can essentially guarantee they'll start a series from episode 1 and can watch for an unspecified amount of time instead of something like one episode a week on a Saturday morning. Thus, they may be expecting consistent progress to the overarching plot of the show. And when the show has little progress to the overarching plot and they watch like 10 episodes back to back, and these episodes resolve the thematic problem and character growth challenge in like 1 minute and 23 seconds, they may feel frustrated at the show, especially since there are a good chunk of capture and jailbreak type episodes. And personally, I think they aired some of the episodes out of order because there were some logic flaws. For example, in one episode, Venger was 100% captured and imprisoned. Then the next episode, he got an Arkham Asylum get out of jail card and is strutting around like a Batman villain. And I do get frustrated at the underutilization of the character's skills and powers. For example, Uni the Unicorn learns how to teleport in an episode. Oh cool, that's like a really powerful skill, right? You're gonna be using that constantly. Well, later on, we almost never see Uni teleport ever again. Kinda like the Half-Life series. That isn't to say that there's no character development or development at all. For example, Eric the Cavalier goes from being scared and hiding away from battle most of the time to jumping in front of magical firebolts with his shields to protect his friends. I just wish that they did that more often. But there are times when the episodes deviate from the given formula, such as the Dragon's Graveyard episode. When it does deviate from the formula, the stakes are high for the heroes, and there is an absence of comedy because of the gravitas of the situation, and they lend themselves to some of the best and most memorable episodes around, especially since these heroes begin to question themselves and contemplate on what is truly the right thing, and the thematic issues take much longer to solve. Much longer, but not that much longer. They still solve it fairly quickly though, because you have to keep in mind they do have to fit the episode within a short time frame. With all of this being said, how does it end? Spoilers incoming, of course. Skip to here if you want to avoid the spoilers. So you want to know my thoughts on the ending? Oh man. What ending? Yeah, that's right. This show never got a network-produced ending because it was cancelled during its run. It's a tragedy too because there were plenty of interesting characters and artifacts and plotlines they could have utilized. The Celestial Knight, for example, went off into unknown lands with the promise of helping the heroes return home. Wouldn't that be cool if he came back? Or what about Sandora, the powerful sorceress the heroes freed from the box prison, makes a return? Or what about that foreshadowing in the Maze of Darkness with all the armored shells? You know, the one where Dungeon Master says that the shells were once his pupils, but you know, they It's such an interesting mystery and would have been a great way to launch into an ending episode. There's so many paths they could have taken. But alas, the show was cancelled and we will never know the ending. Or will we? There is a final script written by Michael Reeves, one of the show's screenwriter. It was paid for by CBS, but unfortunately was never produced. But with the magic of the internet, the script was released, and dedicated fans took it upon themselves to produce the ending the show never got. Now, we have the ending in several different media formats, from comics, to radio dramas, to fan animations, and we can consider these forms of media to be the final episode. So, how do I feel about the final episode? I think it's a brilliant episode that fits the overarching feel of Dungeons & Dragons while pushing the heroes to the brink of their friendship and coming to a strong common ground for teenage viewers and adult viewers alike. In this final episode, Dungeon Master makes a wager with Venger that the heroes will do the right thing without his help, and abandons the Earthlings to their own devices. That's incredibly depressing, and you instantly know this episode isn't going to follow the usual formula. The heroes feel betrayed and immediately begins to quarrel amongst themselves without a unifying force. And the contemplation of splitting up the group and wondering if they did the right thing? It's very humanistic and a teenager can definitely sympathize with that idea. Then the revelation that they weren't brought here to defeat Venger But to redeem him? There were hints that Venger wasn't always evil in previous episodes, and this was the time to put it all together.
Hey, you think maybe Venger's not all bad?
Sure, and Genghis Khan was a stand-up comic.
You are wrong, Cavalier. There was good in Venger once, a long time ago. Everyone makes mistakes. Venger was mine.
And the thematic problem was not instantly solved. They were having the longest battle between not only the monstrous amoeba attacking them, but also their own comrades and inner desperation of going home. There is an immense wave of satisfaction when Eric decides to fully trust Hank the Ranger after his apparent demise and decides to not yeet the key into the infinite abyss and uses it to free the entire realm from their prison. Venger is redeemed, Hank is revealed to have survived his supposed doomfall, and Dungeon Master cries tears of happiness at the redemption of his long-lost son, Venger. And there's an even bigger wave of satisfaction when Dungeon Master opens a portal back to their home world and offers them a choice. Return to their home at long last. Or start another campaign with him. It's a sweet ending, and I like to think that they decided to return home. But if Dungeon Master ever needs help again, they're always available to save the realm. There is an untold amount of delight because after having the portal home snatched away at the last second from these heroes in virtually every single episode, and they were sacrificing so much for the greater good that they finally got a win, and this win felt so deserved and earned. Conclusion: Dungeons & Dragons is an amazing, memorable cartoon from the 1980s. Yes, it has its flaws here and there in regards to story structure, but with only 27 episodes total, the story doesn't drag on for too long. Well, was that a bad pun? This is an outstanding cartoon aimed at a younger audience, but has plenty of other positives for viewers of all ages. There's so much charm in the quality of art and animation, and the voice actors really gave it their all. The themes it touches upon may not be some epic complexes that'll shake and change the core foundation of your life, but it does relate to what a teenager may struggle with at the time. And the level of imagination Dungeons & Dragons reach is like one of Albert Einstein's shirt with the math equations and genius leaking out of it. From embroiled sieging kingdoms to fairy dragon survival to even sci-fi aliens and spaceship, Dungeons & Dragons encompass a vast swatch of creativity. There's even a hilarious meta episode about players complaining about Dungeon Master and having a player take over the role of Dungeon Master. I do recommend this cartoon with a 1980s caveat. It's not for everyone. The thematic plots and character growth challenges are often presented and resolved quickly and with terse explanation, because the episodes kinda need to fit within the 22-minute time frame of a Saturday morning cartoon. It's a product of the 1980s and thus is bound by the constraint of the 1980s, such as the quality of their microphones or computers. However, if you can accept the 1980s condition, then you'll be rewarded with a fun, hilarious, and spellbinding show that will have you cheering the heroes on at every corner. For most of the cartoon's run, you'll be having a lighthearted time interspersed with serious, thoughtful moments. I'd rate it an angry, raging Tiamat over a magic bag of holding. You'll be struck with wanderlust and want to explore the mystical realms of Dungeons & Dragons, from the sheer inventive lands and fascinating creatures and magical artifacts they have. And you'll be smirking at the playful, funky banter between all the various characters. It's almost as if you're observing a game of Dungeons & Dragons. Leave a like, ring the bell if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more minty fresh content, and do leave a comment if you play any tabletop games. I'm really curious if you do. Shadowrun, Dragonlance, Warhammer, doesn't really matter. I'm just curious to see what people play. If you don't play, then did this video pique your interest in the topic? Anyways, thanks for watching and see you next video.
She go bye-bye now.